All right, it's 12:31, so we'll make a start. Okay, everybody, good afternoon to everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us over your lunch break. Very excited to have you all here so we can learn more about the Mallee Elemental 65 Tree Guard. I realise my name's coming up as Mark Jarvis. That's actually my boss. I'm masquerading as him today. I'm actually Kat. I am the Senior Marketing Exec at Arborgreen, be helping everyone through this session. I'm just going to go through some housekeeping really quickly before I hand it over to Sam, who's going to lead us through today. During today, we're going to be allowing about 30 minutes in all, so hopefully a quick one. We'll be giving some time towards Q&A at the end after Sam's taken us through his presentation. And thank you, especially to those who've already submitted their questions. We'll make sure we get to those during the Q&A portion. If throughout the presentation you've got questions, please just go ahead and put those into the chat. We'll make sure we get to them when we get to Q&A. And if we don't get time for any questions at all today, we'll make sure we follow up with you and get to those so everyone's questions are answered. I'd love to go ahead and introduce Sam Dalton, who is today's speaker. Many of you may know Sam already. Sam is about as passionate about tree planting as you can get. He's had 24 years experience in the industry. He's worked in a range of different environments out in the field. He's got an amazing understanding of the many different kinds of tree guards and how we can use them. As our product analyst, he's often out in the field running trials and tests on new and current products and learning about what works, what doesn't, and ultimately looking for better ways to help everyone grow, to help trees grow. That's exactly what he's going to be talking about today. For a bit of fun, something you probably didn't know about Sam or might shock you, his second passion in life outside of tree planting is foot health. His desk is a proud shoe-free zone, and if he takes care of trees even half as well as his feet, you're in great hands. So I've thrown Sam under the bus for his bare feet. I want to hand over the session to him now and let him take you through the Mallee Elemental.
Thank you, Kat. I appreciate that somewhat embarrassing introduction, but she's right. I do care about trees and I do care about foot health. And I've spent many years out there planting trees, often in bare feet. I've actually put in the ground close to 1 million trees personally. So I have put 1 or 2 in the ground. And welcome along to this webinar. I'm really excited about the product that we're going to be sharing with you today, but also some of the research and development behind it. And we've titled this, The Better Way to Grow. And I guess if we look at one of our first questions on that, why do we want a new tree guard? We see the better way to grow, but why do we actually want this better way to grow? And there's so many options of tree guards already available. We've got our fluted plastic sorts of tree guards. We've got plastic mesh tree guards. We've got steel mesh tree guards. We've got cardboard tree guards. We've got plastic sleeves. We've got resin sleeves. Well, look, even though we've got all of these options, we always need to be looking for a better way to grow. How can we improve on these options? How can we identify some of the flaws in these options and make something better? And I love this particular quote by the French author, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, and he said, "A pile of rocks ceases to be a rock pile when somebody contemplates it with the idea of a cathedral in mind." And that's almost literally what we've done with this particular tree guard that we're introducing. We've taken a pile of rocks and we've turned it into some tree protection. And we've done that because we've identified some problems with the existing tree guards that we have on the market. Now, what are those problems? If we think about the traditional fluted plastic tree guard, which make up the bulk of tree guard sales, and we know that from the data on what we have sold, we all know that over time that plastic tree guard is going to degrade and it's going to potentially release those microplastics into the surrounding soil, into the water systems. There's ongoing plastic recycling issues, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, from lack of infrastructure, contamination, the economic incentive, and the limited demand for recycled material. And then with the manufacture of new ones, there's a continuous demand for that raw materials in manufacturing. We do have some challenges with biodegradable tree guards. We love biodegradable tree guards, and they have a great use case scenario in a lot of situations, but they also do have some compromised performance. They've got an ability to protect the plant, yes, but they have a little bit of a reduced lifespan. They have performance issues sometimes in wet conditions, and they can be a little bit more expensive to produce with increased energy costs in those manufacturing. So if we expand on that a little bit further, as we've looked over these options on the market, we started to do a lot of research into the plastic tree guard because that's the highest selling item we looked at that. And when I joined Arborgreen 4 years ago, I thought, hey, we want to get rid of this. What can we do to get rid of this? And we started doing a lot of research into plastic itself. And the plastic tree guards are those normal sort of core flute is another name for it. That is a registered name that belongs to Corex. We call them fluted plastic tree guards. They're typically made from an extruded polypropylene. You can get plastic sleeves made out of a polyethylene. But they often end up in our waterways or other things. And we started looking at what actually happens to the plastic in those materials. And we found this. We found that often they're termed a degradable plastic, which means they'll break down through chemical processes, but they're not going to break down entirely. And they remain in the environment as microplastics. And these microplastics are ultimately consumed by fish, by crustaceans and other smaller animals, and they'll eventually make their way up the food chain, and they affect all species across the board there. There's another term you might have heard thrown around called oxo-degradable, which sounds really cool, doesn't it? Well, it's actually not. It's basically just a conventional plastic, and that's been mixed with an additive to accelerate the rate of degradation. Here's the kicker. They're still breaking down into microplastics. They're still remaining in the environment indefinitely. So they're essentially the same as a degradable plastic. They're just breaking down into smaller pieces faster. Another term you might have seen on plastics that you use is a bioplastic. Now, that's often not degradable. It's a little bit of a misleading term, actually, because bioplastic can apply to 3 different sorts of plastics, one which is not biodegradable at all. And these 3 are a non-biodegradable plastic sourced from a fully or partially based biosource, a biodegradable plastic sourced from a petroleum-based source, or a biodegradable plastic sourced from a fully or partially bio-based source like cornstarch. And of those 3, only the last one is what we would typically label an environmentally friendly product, because it's made out of a renewable cornstarch resin, and it is fully bio-based. And then the last thing, of course, that a tree guard can be is recyclable. And some plastics are recyclable, some plastics are not. Fluted plastic guards are, in theory, 100% recyclable. The soft plastic sleeves are not. In practice, since the 1950s, only 9% of plastic produced has been recycled. Now, that's across the board, not just with tree guards, but it just shows that the quantity of plastic that's been putting out there isn't being recycled very heavily. So if we look at the bioplastic guard, which is the biodegradable one, biodegradable means that it breaks down into water, carbon dioxide, and biomass over time with the help of natural microorganisms. And the carbon dioxide emissions from this process are biogenic. And biogenic means it's got the same amount of gas emitted during that decomposition, whether it's composted or it degrades in a natural setting. And the emissions are considered carbon neutral. However, these biodegradable types of plastics are at the moment extraordinarily expensive, and they haven't been formed into a way that works as a tree guard in an extruded lasting way. So whatever way we cut this, the fact remains at the moment that the vast proportion of plastic tree guards are ending up as microplastics in our waterways. They're being ingested by the animals, birds, and water creatures and buried in landfill. And so the strength of this guard, which is how strong it is and how well it lasts, has become its weakness as it breaks down. Now, I'm probably preaching to the converted here. This is a recognised issue, and it's recognised in all states across Australia. In 2022, Queensland put in place a 5-year roadmap to action bans on single-use plastics. And this included a proposed ban on sale of core flute tree guards. It was actually scheduled for September this year. Now, they just postponed that particular ban on the plastic fluted tree guards because they're hoping to expand that to a national roadmap. But the writing is on the wall for the core flute guards. And in 2020, a couple of years earlier, South Australia also began the process of actioning bans on single-use plastics. And we've seen straws, cutlery, single-use cups, bowls, plates banned. Oxo-degradable plastic products are prohibited from production from 22 onwards. And other states have got similar projects in place. It's our conviction that we're going to see a nationwide ban on plastic tree guards in the not too distant future, and we believe that's a good thing. If we look at the biodegradable tree guards, they're typically made from cardboard or organic bioplastics, and they're an increasing part of tree guard choices. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we like these, but there are a couple of challenges to biodegradable guards, and the main one is their lifespan. They do break down faster. They're typically a 1-season use or a 2-season use, And this can work in favour of the guard if you're doing a riparian planting where a faster growth rate is expected and you want a guard that will break down if washed into the water. You might like that shorter lifespan. But sometimes you want something that's going to be reusable. One of the other costs for the biodegradable type of tree guards is the cost. And it's a lot higher a cost to produce these. And of course, if it's a higher cost to produce them, then that translates to a higher selling price. And then there's less guards being available for the budget. And when we're looking at a lot of the land care groups or similar that we support, or some of those smaller projects, you don't have a lot of extra money to use for these sorts of projects, and you need your dollar to go as far as they can. So they are something also that requires raw materials. If you've got a guard that is going to be breaking down on the ground, then every time you want to put a tree guard out, you have to use more raw materials to make them. They are a brilliant product. They're an environmentally friendly option, and we're going to continue stocking them. And they've got a high use case for the right scenarios. But as we looked over all of this, particularly when we looked at the plastic content of the other guards, we knew that there was going to be a new way forward. And so we have brought out a product which we've called the Mallee Elemental. And it's called Elemental because of what it's made of, and we'll talk about that a bit more in a moment. And we're looking at plant protection that's beyond what we've got now. We want to reduce the impact of this plastic, and we want to recycle and reuse what we've got today and reduce the need for raw materials. And there's a couple of stats there which we'll look at in a little moment about the material that we've actually used. Now, we started to do some testing. And we started on research on different materials around about 4 years ago. And then a company called Disruptive Packaging came on board with us in 2022 with their unicorn material. And we saw some potential in this, and we put some samples out into the field. And the composition of this material, if you're not familiar with it, it's actually made out of 65% ground up limestone. Hence that quote I talked about recently, which is about turning stone into a cathedral. We're actually using stone in the form of a tree guard. It's got 35% HDPE, which is a type of plastic, but it's able to be extruded. It's able to be welded into a tree guard shape. It's waterproof, so it isn't affected by rain events. And we took this material, we formulated it into a tree guard shape, and we put it out in the field with a number of other tree guards that are on the market. We put it in exposed locations, and we had it subject to wind, to rain, to sun, to rabbits, to crows, to cattle, unintentionally, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. And we left it out there for a year to see how this material would go. And if you have a look at the graph we've got here, you will see that we had a very rapid breakdown of the thinner biodegradable type of tree guards. We've got down here these red ones that fell off very quickly. They are excellent for use, by the way, along riverbanks and streams where you want something that's going to break down really quickly. Then we had a slower breakdown of the thicker biodegradable tree guards. You'll see these light green colours with the grow pods, and the green guards were breaking down a lot slower. And then you had a very slow breakdown of the traditional fluted plastic guards, looking at this blue line here. But what we did find, which was very interesting, the colour of the plastic fluted tree guards was actually quite attractive. We had cattle breach the site at a point during our testing, and the cattle breached the site, and they actually liked the colour of those a lot more, whereas the colour of the tree guard that we've put together, the Elemental, was actually something that they ignored and overlooked. So in that test, we knew that the product material was going to be suitable, we knew that it was going to be stable, and we knew that the colour we'd picked was going to work well. And there are also some significant benefits on the recyclability of this, which is something we're going to look at a little bit later. The material itself is a little bit softer than the extruded plastic, and these results are recorded in these conditions. But again, we knew this material was going to be suitable for use as a tree guard. So once we knew we had the right material, we thought, what are we going to make it look like? How are we going to actually design this? And what we did is we looked at the sizing and the conditions and the design parameters around a lot of the tree guards that we knew were working already. And the one that we sell the most of is 450 mil high by 200 mil wide. It's by far the most common size, and it's common because it works for the bulk of the smaller predatory animals. Some of the other things that we've done is we've used a welded design for this particular tree guard. In the past, we've had tab designs which open and close. We found they're not as easy to install, and they also do have a tendency as the material wears to pop open a little bit. So we've gone with a welded type of approach for this tree guard, and we've got cutouts in the back that suit a flat stake, and you can see there on the screen that flat stake, and that helps to stop it spinning around when it's placed in the back of the guard there. Having a bamboo cane in the front like you'd typically use with your core flute is a good option as well if you're in a really high wind area. And you can see here we've got a mallee fowl cutout on the tree guard. Now that's a deliberate design choice as well. There's no mallee fowl cutouts on the lower portion of the guard, so when you're doing your follow-up weed control, you can safely do that without getting drift onto the tree. They're light entry points. You'll see there that it's a light colour, which assists in the reflecting of the light in to make sure that the tree has enough light for its photosynthesis. And the light entry points are there because we know this material is not translucent, and so it lets that little bit of extra light in. And it also assists with strengthening the tree for wind training. And we've got a lot of customers who like the perforations on the fluted tree guards rather than the solid material for this exact reason. The other thing that we designed is a guard that works well for recyclability. We've got a guard that's a small, easy size to pack up in bundles and easily transport them to collection points. Now, when it comes to recycling, one of the difficulties we've had with typical traditional plastic guards has been knowing where to return it. And so we looked at this part on this design, and we put together collection locations in partnership with Disruptive Packaging and RecycleMate. And if you haven't got RecycleMate on your phone, it's a great app to have, and it's a great app to have even if you're not using tree guards with it. And I'll show you a little bit about how that works. So what we've done is we've put together these locations. There's 12 of them for collection of all of these Mallee Elemental tree guards. They include all of our own locations as well as other locations, and you can download an app called RecycleMate. You can type in the name of this tree guard and it's going to pop up the nearest location you've got to take it back, return it, and as well as the opening hours and directions to get there. Now this is the start for us. It's a new product. There's 12 locations on there, and as we get more partners on board, then there's going to be more locations uploaded to this app as further partners are found. So it's a really easy, searchable way to return your tree guards. And we're really excited about this because for all of your land care projects, for all of your bulk tree planting projects, there's an endpoint in mind. And we don't have to have these guards sitting around in the shed waiting and wondering what we're going to do with them after we're going to be using them. The other really exciting thing about the Elemental tree guard is that literally none of the material goes to waste. So it's so much more efficient for recycling than some other materials. And there's a white paper available if you wanted that technical information, which will show you a whole heap of details around the recycling and the carbon emitted through that process and how it compares to the recycling of cardboard or the recycling of styrofoam or the recycling of plastic. But some of the key stats from that, which we're excited about, is 80% less carbon dioxide is actually emitted from production to recycling when you're comparing that with conventional materials. And it takes 92% less energy used to recycle the unicore, the material that the Elemental is made out of, than conventional cardboard. And it's 100% closed loop and recyclable. So literally every single tree guard that's purchased that enters that recycling chain will be recycled into further unicore, unicomb, or unicool products, which are all variations and adaptations of the same thing. So we're excited about that because plastic going out into the environment, turning into microplastic, something none of us want to see. And so the fact that we've got something available now which can go out, can be used, and can be returned and recycled and just keep going around in a circle is really, really going to reduce the amount. Some other interesting facts on this. The plastic component of the Elemental 65 is HDPE, and this is one of the easiest plastics to recycle. It's a number 2 plastic, and so it's widely accepted by recycling programs globally. If you compare that with the fluted plastic polypropylene, which is a number 5 plastic, that is not as widely accepted, and HDPE is often recycled into non-food containers and crates, pens, plastic lumber, and picnic tables. And polypropylene recycling is a little bit more challenging than HDPE recycling because polypropylene is actually sensitive to high heat. And so during that mechanical recycling process, PP can lose some of its strength, flexibility, and chemical integrity, whereas HDPE doesn't. And again, if you want to read that white paper, We do have that on all the recycling statistics, and we'd be happy to send that out to you to have a look at yourself. So when we look at this, we genuinely see this as the new way forward. We've looked at all of the challenges that exist with current tree guards. I've got them listed on the screen there for you just in summary, and we've looked at the ways that the Elemental tree guard solves that. We've looked at the way they degrade, and we've reduced that plastic content. We've looked at the recycling issues, and we've got a closed-loop recycling system with old for new. We've looked at the fact there's a continuous demand for raw materials, and we've got something that's 100% recyclable. We've looked at the biodegradable alternatives. Again, I love biodegradable alternatives, and they have a use case scenario. We want them around. But we've looked at this one, which is trial, tested, and proven, and we don't have to have some of those compromises. We no longer have a choice, I guess, between a biodegradable and a fluted plastic guard. We've got the biodegradable, and then we've got the Elemental, and that we believe that's the replacement for the fluted plastic. And it's made from stone. It's literally made from ground up stone that can keep going round and round. So once you've got that initial guard there, you never have to do that again. Here's some interesting numbers for you. The Australian government's goal for growing a better Australia sets a target for growing 1 billion trees over a decade. And as most plastic tree guards weigh between 50 to 100 grams, if Australia planted just 10 million trees from that with their Mallee Elemental 65 tree guard, it's going to reduce the amount of plastic from 1,000 tonnes of plastic to 350 tonnes. But more importantly, those 350 tonnes will be fully recycled into new unicorn material with no waste or fuss, and reducing those materials, the raw materials, energy and emissions. So this is a better way to grow. It's a better way for all of us to grow, and the impact that this is going to have on the tree planting industry, we believe, is going to be significant. And for all of us, that leads to a better future. And this is just the start. I will give you a little bit of a heads up that there's another material that's being worked on that's going to be even more sustainable. It's going to be based on something very similar to this, but a version of this which the HDPE will be replaced with something else that we can leave out in the field. So we're excited. We're looking forward to supporting you with this tree guard, and we will throw it open now for some questions and answers on this, which I would love to answer. Kat, I'll hand over to you to guide that and pop through the questions that have been put in the chat.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sam. I'm sure we're all very excited. We've all got some burning questions. I want to remind everyone to just put their questions into the chat if you do have one. I've got some pre-received questions while I give everyone a chance to quickly type those in there. I might just throw to one of those, and then we'll go to any questions people have got that are burning at the moment. So the first one we had was, what do we do when we have heaps, as in pallets worth of guards to recycle? That was one of the questions we had.
That's a good question. If I scroll back a few slides here, you'll see that the recycling bins that we've put in place are big enough to take 1 to 2 pallets worth of tree guards. But certainly if you've got a project that's a very, very large project, you might have 20,000 tree guards or more, we can arrange collection of those at one of our facilities. We can palletize those and we can send those off for recycling in exactly the same way. And if there's not a location close to you, we can certainly have a chat with the people we've partnered with to organise how to get that back to us and recycle them.
That's great. Thanks, Sam. I haven't seen any further questions in the chat yet, so I'll throw to another one that we received. This one is, what other types of guards can you use this material for?
So to expand on that, I guess that question's looking at, we're making one that's a 450 by 200 mil guard. And I'm guessing the question is asking, can we make other tree guards out of this? Yes, we can. We've chosen this size because it's the most popular size, but we do have plans to use this material to make other sizes. Another one that we sell a lot of is the 600 high, which is for slightly larger animals, and it's often used in Queensland. We can also go wider. We can look at making things, smaller ones to go around trees for other types of animals, possums or similar. We can and will adapt this material to different sorts of guards.
I've just had someone try and put a question in through the Q&A. The Q&A section isn't functioning for this one. We're just using the chat section, which is just the little 2 talk bubbles down the bottom of your screen. If you click on those, I'll open up a window for you to type your responses. Thank you, Tim. If we can't get to your question now, we'll make sure we take that after the session. The next question we have was, I work in Queensland. Are there limitations to where you can use these?
No, there's not. The only limitation I would personally impose on it from a practical point of view would be along the banks of the river where you wouldn't want to use a corflute tree guard. I would rather use a biodegradable tree guard there anyway. You can use these along there, but a biodegradable option is going to be the better option along a stream bank. I can see that Tim has put up a comment saying the chat is disabled there. Tim, we are able to read that comment. So if you do have any other questions.
Yeah, sorry for that, guys, if that's not working for anyone today. Yeah, please do. Yeah, try and put your questions in there. We'll look into that and see what's going on there. That's not ideal. But yeah, please put them in. If we can't take your question now, we'll send out a recording and an email. We'll make sure we follow up with you and make sure you get an answer to your questions.
There you go. I've got a question come through. Sorry if I missed it, but how long do these last and how do they compare price-wise to fully biodegradable tree guards? Great questions. 2 questions there. Price-wise, you're looking at around about 11 to 12% higher than a fluted plastic guard. That's sitting down at around about the 65 to 70% compared to a biodegradable tree guard. So they're quite cost competitive compared to biodegradable. They're just a little bit higher than the fluted plastic tree guard. How long do they last? The material that we've had out in the field has been out there for a year and it's shown no sign of degradation. It's still retaining its structure and it still hasn't bent over. We wanted to test it for at least a year to see it got through that full season. They are a waterproof material. We've noticed a little bit of chafing and wear around where the stake goes through, as you normally get in a fluted plastic guard. My gut feel on this is that they are going to have a slightly shorter lifespan than the fluted plastic, but significantly longer than the biodegradable. I'd be fairly confident they'd be at least a 2-season guard, probably more. The ones I put out in my own garden are guards that I would expect to protect the trees for those growth period and then use them the second time around. So thank you, they're excellent questions. And if you do want sort of some quotes on particular volumes, let us know by email or similar, and we can shoot those prices out to you.
Thanks, Sam. Does anyone have any final questions to wrap us up with? And again, sorry if the chat's not working, just, yeah, pop them in the Q&A if you can. All right, well, I think we've answered all the questions for now. So we can wrap it up there. Of course, I want to thank Sam for his time this morning, all his insight on the new Mallee Elemental. It's very exciting stuff. What we'll be doing next is we'll make sure we email out everyone a copy of the recording, give you another chance to ask those questions if you didn't get a chance to do so today. We'll also give you a copy of the white paper as well, just in case you want to have a read of that. And Sam's happy to take your questions directly to his email. We'll pop that in there for you too. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, taking the time over lunch. Hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time with us, and we'll see you next time.